By the time the emergency room doctor asked where I had been walking, my right foot had already gone numb. Not asleep. Numb. There was a difference. An asleep foot tingles when you touch it. Mine felt like somebody else's foot attached to my ankle. Dr. Lena Ortiz lifted it gently and turned the sole toward the exam light. 6 narrow red lines ran from the ball of my foot toward the heel. They were too straight to be scratches, too deep to be irritation. One of them moved. Not much, just enough for Lena to stop breathing. She looked at me. "Where did you say you were staying?" "My grandfather's farm." "What county?" "Caddo." "How long?" "3 days." "Did he leave you any warnings?" I almost laughed. Then I remembered the words carved into the kitchen wall. "Keep your boots on. Never let the soil touch your bare skin." I showed her the photograph on my phone. Lena read it twice. Then she locked the exam room door. "My name is Caleb Ward. I was 24 when I inherited 86 acres of Oklahoma farmland from a man I had never met. I grew up outside St. Louis with my mother's parents after my parents died in a highway accident when I was 2. They existed as photographs and stories that changed depending on who told them. Adults think children need stories more than accuracy. By the time I asked better questions, my grandparents answered with fatigue. The one person nobody discussed was my father's father, Silas Ward. He lived in Oklahoma. He sent birthday cards without messages and checks signed in blue ink. I saw him once from a distance at my mother's funeral in a home video. A tall man stood beneath an oak tree wearing work boots and holding a hat in both hands. He did not approach the family. I asked my grandmother why. She said Silas believed distance was a form of protection. At 12, I thought that sounded wise. At 24, it sounded like cowardice. I had just finished a degree in communications and public policy when a package arrived at my apartment. Inside was a death certificate, a copy of Silas Ward's will, and a letter from Hart and Vale Legal Services in Anadarko. Silas had left me the farmhouse, 2 barns, a workshop, 86 acres, mineral rights, farm equipment, a lease agreement with Red Creek Agriculture, and a small educational trust containing just over $38,000. I reread the documents until the numbers felt less real. My student loans were larger than the trust. My apartment lease ended in 6 weeks. I had no job offer. Suddenly, I owned land. I called the lawyer listed in the packet. Gideon Hart answered with the polished patience of a man who billed by the hour, even when speaking to family friends. "Caleb," he said, "I'm sorry we're meeting this way. You knew my grandfather. For 41 years. Why didn't I—" Silence. "Then that question belongs to the dead. I'm asking the living." He sighed. Silas was complicated. Everybody says that when they mean difficult. Gideon laughed softly. "You sound like him." I did not know whether that was an insult. He explained that Red Creek Agriculture leased 68 acres for winter wheat and seed testing. The current lease produced modest income and had 18 months remaining. "Grant Bell wants to extend it," Gideon said. "Who is Grant Bell?" "Your grandfather's neighbor and tenant, good family, employs half the county during harvest." "I don't know anything about farming." "You don't need to. You can keep the property, collect rent, or sell. Grant has expressed interest in buying." "How much?" Gideon named a figure high enough to erase my loans and leave a down payment on a city condo. For 20 minutes, I imagined selling without ever seeing the place. Then Gideon said, "Silas requested that you inspect the property personally before making any decision. Is that legally required?" "No." "Then why—" He was very specific. I heard paper move. "There's also a handwritten addendum." "What does it say?" "Keep your boots on. Do not enter the north barn after rain. Do not extend the lease until you have watched Lecture 9. I waited. "That's it." "That is it." "What is Lecture 9? "I don't know." "You were his attorney for 41 years. "I was not his student." "I should have sold immediately." Instead, curiosity did what inheritance could not. It made the farm feel personal. 3 days later, I packed my car and drove south. The property sat 12 miles from the nearest town, on a road that narrowed from pavement to gravel to two muddy tracks. A line of cottonwoods marked the creek. Beyond them stood the farmhouse. White siding, green metal roof, broad porch, and windows that reflected the sunset like closed eyes. The farm did not look abandoned. The lawn was cut, the gutters clean, and a new heat pump sat behind the house. A key waited beneath a ceramic boot on the porch. Beside it lay an envelope. Caleb. Inside was a note written in the same blue ink as my childhood birthday checks. If you decide I was a fool, leave before dark. If you decide I was a coward, watch the lectures first. Keep your boots on. Silas. The front door opened into a narrow hall smelling of cedar dust and something faintly chemical. The house was old, but maintained with modern appliances and a blinking router. Every exterior door had a rubber mat soaked in clear liquid and several pairs of boots beside it. The kitchen wall carried the warning. Not painted, carved. Keep your boots on. Never let the soil touch your bare skin. Underneath in smaller letters. If it itches, do not scratch. I photographed it. Then I checked the doors. The north-facing back door had 3 deadbolts. A strip of red tape crossed the threshold. I told myself Silas had become paranoid in old age. The house offered evidence against that conclusion. Bills were organized. Medication bottles labeled. A calendar listed appointments. The refrigerator contained fresh sealed meals dated the week before his death. Paranoia usually spills. Silas had contained his. Upstairs, I found the master bedroom. A prosthetic leg leaned beside the dresser. The socket was cracked. The foot wore a rubber overshoe. A framed photograph showed Silas younger standing in a wheat field with 3 men in white coveralls. One man was Gideon Hart. One was Grant Bell's father, though I did not know that yet. The fourth wore a government agriculture badge. On the back, Silas had written, Red Creek Pilot, 1998. We thought drought would kill it. I slept badly. Not because of noises. Because the house was too quiet between them. Country silence was a series of small lives moving without permission. Crickets mice wind beneath doors, branches touching metal. At 2:10 a.m., something scraped beneath the kitchen floor. Long, slow, then stopped. I put on the boots beside the bed before going downstairs. The kitchen was empty. The floor felt warm through the soles. I opened the basement door. A steel plate covered the first stair. A padlock held it shut. A label read, No entry without respirator. I returned upstairs. In the morning, Grant Bell arrived in a silver pickup. He was 53, broad-shouldered, sunburned, and wearing clean jeans with muddy boots. His handshake lasted a second too long. Caleb Ward, he said, Silas's city grandson. St. Louis isn't exactly New York. Everything east of Tulsa is city to my father. He handed me a folder. Lease maps, payment records, an extension agreement. We can keep things simple, he said. 5 more years, same acreage, better annual rate. Why did Silas tell me not to extend? Grant smiled without humor. Silas told everybody not to do things. Did you know about Lecture 9? His eyes moved toward the house. No, that was a lie. Not a dramatic one. A small delay before the answer. I had studied interviews in college. Most people think liars look away. Often they look directly at you because they are monitoring belief. Grant did that. He pointed toward the north field. Your grandfather stopped farming after the accident. Red Creek kept the place productive. What accident? Auger injury. His leg. Grant nodded. Bad night, he was lucky to live. The photograph upstairs suggested another story. What is in the north barn? Old equipment. Why is it locked? Because old equipment kills people. He said the sentence too quickly. I asked about the chemical mats. Grant looked down at his boots. Ticks, chiggers, Silas hated parasites. He carved a warning into the wall. He taught entomology online after the accident. Bugs get into a man's head. Before leaving, Grant placed the lease extension on the porch rail. The buyer offer Gideon mentioned won't remain forever. I haven't decided to sell. You will. It was not a threat. It was confidence. That bothered me more. I spent the afternoon searching Silas's office. The computer required a password. A note taped beneath the keyboard said, "Begin with your father's birth year." I entered 1971. Wrong. I tried my mother's. Wrong. Then my own. The desktop opened. Folders covered the screen. Lectures, soil maps, medical scans, legal correspondence. A folder named Caleb, Watch in Order. Lecture 1 began with Silas sitting before a whiteboard. He looked older than the man in the photograph, but younger than the body described in the death certificate. His right leg ended below the knee. He wore a collared shirt and spoke with the calm precision of someone used to students. "My name is Silas Ward. If you are watching this, I have failed to explain myself while alive." He paused. I chose that failure. The lecture was not about insects. It was about family. He said my father Aaron left Oklahoma at 19 after accusing Silas of caring more about Red Creek research than his family. Silas admitted that was partly true. He believed his work would save farms from drought-resistant crop pests. He missed birthdays. He broke promises. When my father died, Silas wanted to come for me. My maternal grandparents refused. They said he was unstable and dangerous. Silas did not challenge them. "I told myself distance protected you," he said. "It also protected me from being rejected." That was the first thing he said that sounded like a person instead of a warning. Lecture 2 explained the farm. In 1998, Red Creek Agriculture partnered with a private biological control company called Terravax Solutions. The project tested a modified soil nematode designed to attack root-boring beetles. The organism carried a symbiotic bacterium lethal to larvae, but supposedly harmless to humans. Trials took place on 6 farms. Silas's was one. The test plots failed. Not because the nematodes died, because they adapted. They stopped waiting for beetle larvae, Silas said. They followed heat, carbon dioxide, and salt. I paused the video. My mouth had gone dry. He continued. Under dry conditions, the organism entered a hardened, dormant stage. After rain or irrigation, it moved toward the surface. Bare skin provided heat, moisture, and microscopic openings. Early exposure caused itching and linear inflammation. Deeper invasion followed nerves and connective tissue. The company terminated the trial. Reports were sealed under a settlement. 5 farms had topsoil removed. Silas refused removal from his land. At first I assumed pride. Then he explained. Excavation increased airborne dispersal. The cleanup crew at another site developed respiratory symptoms. Silas believed deep containment was safer. The farm became an unofficial monitoring site. Red Creek planted shallow-root winter wheat to limit disturbance and keep the soil dry. The lease was part of the containment plan. Lecture 3 showed photographs. Red tracks beneath skin, inflamed feet, a calf with lesions around its hooves, a farm worker's hand wrapped in gauze. I closed the file. I walked outside onto the porch. My boots were still on. The north field rolled gold beneath the afternoon sun. Nothing moved. Nothing looked contaminated. That was the horror of it. Danger did not glow. It did not announce itself. It looked like land people wanted to buy. At 4, Gideon Hart called. "Grant says you have concerns." "He called you already." "He has a business interest. So do you." "My interest is closing the estate properly." "What was Red Creek Pilot EHC?" Silence. "Then where did you hear that?" "Silas's lectures." Gideon's voice changed. "Do not open the north barn." "Why?" "Because your grandfather kept unstable chemicals. He said it was a biological control trial." "I am driving out. Answer me now." "I will answer in person." He hung up. I should have waited. Instead, I went to the north barn. The structure stood beyond a strip of cracked earth and weeds. Red warning stakes marked a rectangle around it. The padlock was new. I did not have the key. A side window had been boarded from inside. Behind the barn, the soil looked darker. A shallow trench ran toward the creek but stopped at a concrete plug. Near the foundation, I found 3 dead mice. No visible injury. Each had black staining around the mouth. I backed away. The sky had changed. Clouds gathered west of the property. Rain was coming. I returned to the house. Gideon arrived before sunset. He wore a tan suit, polished boots, and an expression that had aged 10 years since our phone call. He stepped onto the porch and stopped at the chemical mat. "You kept the mats," he said. "Apparently." "Did you touch the ground?" "No." "Did you enter the barn?" "No." Another lie. A harmless one, I thought. That distinction would not survive the night. Inside, Gideon poured himself water and did not drink it. He admitted he represented Silas during the Teravac settlement. He said the company no longer existed. Its patents had been purchased twice. The state agriculture department considered the site stable. Stable enough for Grant to farm, under a restricted method. "Why isn't that in the deed?" "It is in a confidential environmental covenant." I read the deed. "You read the public instrument?" "So I inherited contaminated land without disclosure." "You inherited the monitoring agreement, too." "I did not sign it." "Silas did." "I was too." Gideon looked toward the carved warning. He believed the organism was declining. Did he lose his leg to it? Gideon's silence answered. "It wasn't an auger accident." "No." "How?" "A worker removed his boots after irrigation. Silas pulled him from the field. His own boot had a split seam." "What happened to the worker?" "He recovered." "And Silas?" "The infection advanced before they understood it." "Why keep this secret?" "Land values, liability, panic. Pick one." "Which one was yours?" He looked at me. "All of them." Rain struck the roof. One drop, then many. Gideon stood immediately. "Lock the back door." "It is locked." "Close the vents." "What vents?" He moved through the kitchen, shutting a floor register and sealing it with a rubber cover stored in a cabinet. I helped him close 3 more. The house had been modified for this. Rainwater streamed from the gutters. Outside, the soil darkened. Gideon said, "You need to leave tonight." "You drove here." "My truck has sealed floor mats." "So does my car." "Then pack." "What happens to the farm?" "We extend Grant's lease. He keeps the soil managed. You sell later under controlled terms." "Controlled by who?" "People who understand the risk." "People who hit it." Thunder shook the windows. The power flickered. From beneath the kitchen floor came the scraping sound. Longer this time. Gideon froze. "What is that?" I asked. He whispered, "The basement drain." A wet line appeared beneath the locked basement plate. Not water. Something darker. It spread across the tile in a narrow thread. Gideon stepped backward. "Boots," he said. "Do not let it touch the boots above the sole." I looked down. Mud clung to the edge of my right boot. From the north barn, the rain had activated whatever I stepped through. I moved toward the back door. Gideon grabbed my arm. "Do not carry it outside through the house." "What do I do?" "Bleach tray." The chemical mat. I stepped onto it. The mud dissolved into gray streaks. A sharp smell filled the kitchen. For a moment, nothing happened. Then I felt warmth inside the boot. Not outside, inside. I remembered the side window. The dark soil. The lie I had told. I had stepped off the marked path. I pulled the boot off. Gideon shouted no. My bare foot touched the kitchen tile for less than a second. The floor felt warm. A sensation like fine sand moved beneath my skin. I put the boot back on. Too late. That was 3 hours before Dr. Lena Ortiz watched something move under the sole of my foot. Lena did not call it a parasite in my chart. She wrote, "Migrating subcutaneous inflammatory process of unknown origin." That language kept the hospital from treating me like I had arrived with a ghost story. It also kept the county health department from receiving an automatic alert. At first, she injected local anesthetic around the longest red line and made a narrow incision near my heel. Clear fluid rose from the cut. Then a black filament appeared against the gauze. It was thinner than sewing thread. Lena caught it with forceps. The filament twisted around the metal. Not a reflex. Movement. She dropped it into a specimen cup. The thing struck the plastic wall, repeatedly following the warmth of her hand. Lena sealed the cup inside 2 bags. "What is that?" I asked. "I don't know. Is it inside the rest of my foot? I don't know. Am I going to lose my leg?" Her eyes shifted. "Doctors are trained to manage fear without promising. I think you came in early." "That isn't an answer. It is the only honest one I have." She ordered blood work, ultrasound, MRI, and infectious disease consultation. A specialist joined by video and listed familiar causes until Lena showed him the specimen. Then he asked for the farm's exact coordinates. Gideon arrived before the scan. He had changed clothes, but not boots. Lena met him in the hall. I could hear them through the door. "You knew this was possible," she said. "I knew there was an old agricultural site. You told him to leave after exposure. I brought him here." "You brought him to a hospital with no protocol." "Silas's record said early migration could be slowed with cold and hypertonic solution." "Where are those records?" "At the farm." "Then call someone." "There is no one." Lena opened the door. "Your lawyer is withholding medical information." "He withholds everything." Gideon entered. His face looked pale beneath the fluorescent light. "Silas maintained an emergency kit in the basement," he said. "The locked basement?" "Yes." "What is in it?" "Preserved research, treatment instructions, a compound Teravax developed before the settlement." Lena asked. "Approved by whom?" "Nobody." "Tested on whom?" Gideon looked at me. "Silas." The MRI showed inflammation tracking upward from my foot, but no large masses. Lena packed my leg in cooling wraps. She used a concentrated saline irrigation around the incision and started broad-spectrum anti-parasitic medication, though she admitted there was no evidence it would work. The itching intensified. It did not feel like an itch on skin. It felt like a demand inside the nerves. My hands moved toward my foot without permission. Lena wrapped my wrists loosely to the bed rails. "Don't scratch," she said. "I know. You say that now." Every few minutes, one of the red lines shifted. The movement was slow enough to question, fast enough to watch. At midnight, a laboratory technician called Lena. The specimen had died after the cup was refrigerated. Under magnification, it appeared to contain structures consistent with both a nematode and an insect larval stage. The technician believed the sample was contaminated. He disposed of it. Lena asked how. He said standard biohazard incineration. She hung up and swore. "Why is that bad?" I asked. "Because now the only physical sample is gone." "Could it spread in the lab?" "Not after incineration." Gideon sat in a corner. He had not left. At 1 in the morning, my fever rose. The redness reached my ankle. Lena said we could transfer me to Oklahoma City, but transport would take time, and the specialist had no specific treatment. Gideon finally opened his phone. He showed her a photograph of a handwritten page. "Silas's emergency protocol. Exposure stage 1. Do not apply fresh water. Cool limb below 58 degrees Fahrenheit. Hypertonic flush at entry site. Compound T14. Topical along migration path. Repeat until movement stops. Do not incision above primary entry." Lena read it. "What is T14? A bacterial metabolite suspended in alcohol." "Where?" "Basement refrigerator." "Does the power still work?" "Backup generator." "You want me to put an unapproved chemical on him?" "I want you to see the rest of the file." She looked at me. I asked, "What happens if we wait?" "The inflammation is advancing." That sounds like doctor language for bad. "Yes." Gideon drove to the farm with a sheriff's deputy who believed they were retrieving records related to a chemical exposure. The rain continued. He returned 2 hours later carrying a hard plastic case. The deputy did not come inside. Lena took the case to the pharmacy clean room. Inside were sealed amber vials, laminated instructions, photographs, and Silas's treatment log. He had used T14 on himself 4 times. The first 3 exposures resolved. The fourth entered through a split boot and reached damaged tissue before treatment. That was the infection that cost him his leg. Lena called the infectious disease specialist. They argued for 15 minutes. He refused to authorize the compound. She documented his refusal. Then she asked me, "I can continue standard treatment and transfer you. Will it stop this? I don't know. Did T14 stop Silas's early infections?" According to his own notes. What could it do to me? Chemical burns, nerve damage, allergic reaction, infection. It may do nothing. What happens if the lines reach my knee? Gideon answered before she did. Silas wrote that treatment became much less reliable. I signed. The compound smelled like vinegar metal and rotten oranges. Lena applied it along the red tracks. Pain arrived seconds later. Not burning, cold. A deep cold that seemed to enter the bone. The lines beneath my skin contracted. One snapped backward toward the incision. Dark fluid leaked from the cut. Lena irrigated it with salt solution. A cluster of black threads emerged. Some moved. Some had curled into tight rings. She collected every piece. This time, she kept the samples under her own control. The procedure lasted 40 minutes. When it ended, the itching stopped. Not faded. Stopped. I cried. Not from pain, from silence. For the next 12 hours, ultrasound showed no migration. The redness receded. The numbness remained in 2 toes. Lena reported the case to the state health department. Gideon objected. "You cannot contain this privately anymore," she said. "It has been contained for 27 years. A man walked into my emergency room with an organism moving beneath his skin. Because he ignored the warning." I turned toward him. "I stepped off a path. You lied about it." "I lied because every person connected to the farm taught me that truth was negotiable." Gideon looked away. The state assigned an environmental epidemiologist named Dr. Priya Nanduri. She arrived the next afternoon with 2 agriculture inspectors and a stack of forms. By then, the official language had become possible soil-borne exposure at a legacy biological control research site. Priya interviewed me, Lena, and Gideon separately. When she returned, she said there was no active state record of a hazardous organism at the property. Gideon said the files were sealed. State environmental covenants cannot be sealed from the state. Then your department lost them. Priya did not argue. She asked for access to the farm. Gideon said the owner could authorize it. Everyone looked at me. I was still wearing cooling wraps. What happens if I say yes? We collect surface and subsurface samples. Will you dig limited cores? Silas believed digging could spread it. We will use containment procedures. Procedures written for what? Priya paused. For unknown biological hazards. Unknown. The word was honest and useless. I authorized access with conditions based on Silas's notes. No work after rain, no unsealed excavation, full protective suits. Samples stored cold. Grant Bell called me 20 minutes later. You invited the state onto the property. How do you know? They called Red Creek about field access. You told me the warning was an old man's obsession. I told you the farm had been managed safely. Did you know Silas lost his leg to the soil? Grant breathed slowly. Yes. Did you know what was in the trial? Yes. Did you know I was exposed? Gideon told me. Why are you worried about inspectors instead of me? I am worried about all of it. You offered to buy the farm. To keep it managed. You offered a development price. To keep outsiders from asking why the land was cheap. That answer surprised me. It was not innocent. But it was not the answer of a man trying only to profit. Grant continued. If the state declares a biological hazard, they quarantine more than your 86 acres. They test the creek, they test my land, they stop planting. 50 people lose seasonal work. Banks call loans, families leave. If the organism spread, they should test. It has not spread. How do you know? Because we monitor. Who is we? Silence. Grant. My father, Silas, Gideon, me. Where are the records? Not with the state. Why? Because the last time government contractors came, 3 workers carried it to another site. Silas's lecture said that. Then you understand. I understand you decided the public did not deserve to know. The public is not a person, Caleb. It does not lose a house. It does not sit across from a banker. What about the workers who were exposed? Grant did not answer. He had turned their harm into an abstract calculation. Grant said, "Stay in the hospital. Let us handle the farm." No. Your grandfather spent half his life keeping that ground closed. He also left the evidence to me. He left it to the only person who did not understand what disclosure would cost. The call ended. Priya's team visited the property after 48 dry hours. I watched through a live feed from a body camera. White suits crossed the yard. They collected soil at the porch, the north barn, the wheat field, and the creek bank. The first samples showed nothing unusual. Grant sent me a text. Silas was right. Leave it alone. Then the inspector near the north barn reported movement in a warm collection tray. The camera shifted. Dozens of dark threads gathered along the side closest to his gloved hand. The inspector sealed the tray. Priya ordered everyone out. Preliminary microscopy found a dormant organism concentrated in one narrow band of soil. The highest count appeared behind the north barn. The second highest appeared beside the basement drain. The house was not merely built near contamination. Its drainage system connected to the original test plot. Silas had used the basement as a monitoring chamber. That night, someone set fire to the north barn. The security alert reached my phone at 2:17 a.m. I opened the camera feed. Flames climbed one wall. A pickup drove away without headlights. Priya's team called the fire department. By sunrise, the barn was gone. The original soil core freezer, field notebooks, Teravax sample records, all burned. The concrete foundation remained. So did a steel hatch beneath the floor. The fire exposed it. Grant arrived before the sheriff had finished taking photographs. He claimed he saw smoke from his property. The sheriff asked where he had been at 2:17. Grant said home. His wife confirmed it. His pickup was parked beside him. No visible damage. The camera had recorded only shape and wheelbase. Gideon called the fire a predictable accident in an old structure. I asked whether barns often drove away after starting themselves. He told me not to speak without counsel. You are my counsel, not in a criminal investigation involving the property. Were you involved? No. Did you know about the hatch? His silence returned. What is under it? The original containment room. I thought the basement was the monitoring chamber. The basement monitored migration toward the house. What did the barn monitor? Gideon closed his eyes. The source. Teravax had not merely tested the organism in the field. It had maintained a breeding colony beneath the barn. When the trial ended, the company claimed the colony had been sterilized and sealed. Silas never believed it. For 27 years, he had monitored the hatch. The fire had destroyed the records proving who built it, but the hatch itself remained. Priya requested a federal hazardous material team. Grant filed for an emergency injunction through Red Creek Agriculture, arguing that opening the hatch could contaminate the region. For the first time, his legal action aligned with Silas's warning. I did not know whether he was protecting people or evidence. Often those motives share a door. I was discharged after 5 days. Lena made me promise not to return to the farm. I moved into a motel near the hospital. My right foot remained weak. 2 toes had reduced sensation. Every itch woke me. Most were ordinary. None felt ordinary anymore. Silas's remaining lectures were stored on the farmhouse computer. The state had sealed the property. Remote access required a security key located in his office. I asked Priya to retrieve it. She said the warrant covered environmental sampling, not personal electronics. Gideon could seek permission. Gideon stopped returning calls. Then someone tried to access Silas's computer remotely. My email received a login alert from an address registered to Red Creek Agriculture. I changed the password from my motel room. 30 seconds later, Grant called. You locked us out. Why were you in? The lease files are on that computer. So are Silas's lectures. You don't understand what he recorded. Then explain. Not on the phone. Come to the motel. No. Why? Because your doctor reported this. There are reporters calling the county. If anyone sees me meeting you, it becomes a story. It already is. The first article appeared that evening without names. By morning, local television identified the farm. Grant's seasonal workers did not report. A lender froze Red Creek's operating line pending environmental review. The county closed the road. People drove past the barricade anyway to take photographs. One man posted a video claiming government scientists had created worms that could eat cattle. Another said the farm contained military bioweapons. Panic did not require facts, only space where facts had been withheld. Grant sent me a photograph of an empty payroll board. You wanted the public. Here it is. I stared at it for a long time. Then I called him. I did not make people stay home. You made fear profitable. You burned the barn. I did not. Did your father know the colony was still alive? Grant's voice lowered. My father died believing he had contained it. Did he sign false reports? Yes. The honesty stopped me. So did Silas, Grant said. So did Gideon. So did I. Why tell me now? Because you think there is a clean side. I think people had a right to know. Your father knew. My hand tightened around the phone. What? Ask Gideon why Aaron Ward left Oklahoma. My father left because he hated Silas. He left because he found the medical files. What medical files? The workers from the pilot. Grant ended the call. Gideon finally answered when I called from Lena's phone. I asked one question. Did my father know? A long silence. Yes. How much? Enough. Why didn't he report it? He tried. What happened? Come to my office. No. Tell me. Caleb. Tell me why my father died believing Silas chose research over him. Gideon's voice broke for the first time. Because I made him believe that. He had represented Terravax during the settlement and Silas personally. That conflict should never have existed. Aaron found worker medical files in the north barn. He threatened to contact a newspaper. Gideon warned him that disclosure would expose Silas to criminal charges, bankrupt the family, and place every contaminated worker's medical history in public court records. Aaron agreed to delay for 1 week while Gideon negotiated. During that week, Terravax paid the workers and sealed the files. Aaron left. Silas believed his son had accepted money. Aaron believed Silas approved the threat. Neither spoke honestly again. Did my father take money? I asked. No. Did Silas? No. Did you? Gideon whispered. Yes. The room felt smaller. How much? Enough to tell myself I was protecting everyone. Were my parents' deaths connected? No, the accident was an accident. I believed him, not because he deserved trust, because guilt sounded different when it reached something it had not caused. Why did Silas keep you as his lawyer? He wanted one person close who knew the entire record. That sounds like trust. It was surveillance. What is Lecture 9? Gideon said nothing. Grant knows. Yes. What is it? The confession Silas never sent. To who? The state, Terravax's successor. The families. You. Where is it? Not on the computer. Then where? Under the hatch. The federal team would not open the hatch while Grant's injunction remained active. For 9 days, lawyers argued about risk while the organism remained beneath a burned barn. The state wanted access. Red Creek wanted an independent containment review. The county wanted the road reopened. The successor company that owned Terravax's old patents wanted everyone to stop using its name. That company was called Oren Biological Systems. Oren sent 2 attorneys to Oklahoma and no scientists. They requested a meeting with me at Gideon's office. I brought Lena and a new attorney named Mariah Cole, who specialized in environmental claims. Gideon sat on the opposite side of the table, not beside me. That made our relationship clear at last. Oren offered to purchase the farm for $3,200,000. They would assume cleanup compensate Red Creek for one planting season and fund my medical care. In return, I would transfer all property data samples recordings and claims connected to Silas Ward. The agreement prohibited public statements that could identify Teravax or Oren without prior approval. Mariah read 3 pages and closed the folder. "This is not a purchase," she said. "It is custody of evidence." One Oren attorney replied, "It is a comprehensive resolution." I asked Gideon whether he helped draft it. He said yes. "Did you burn the barn?" "No." "Did you know someone would—" "No." "Why should I believe you?" "You should not." That answer was the first useful thing he gave me. $3 million was difficult to reject with student debt, nerve damage, and land that might never be safe. Oren was offering escape. Lena tapped the agreement. "If Caleb signs, what happens to the exposed workers in the old files?" The attorney said verified claims would be evaluated. "By you, through an independent administrator." "Paid by you." That is standard. Mariah asked for the full list of prior claims. Oren refused. The meeting ended. Gideon followed us into the parking lot. He handed me a small brass key. "This opens the inner box beneath the hatch." "How do you know?" "I locked it." "Why give it to me now?" "Because Oren's offer means they believe Silas kept something they cannot dismiss." "Did you arrange the fire?" "No." "Who did?" "I don't know, but Grant did not." "You sound certain." "His daughter was in the barn." I stared at him. "When?" "The afternoon before the fire. Mara Bell took soil monitoring books without telling Grant." "Where is she?" "Home, I think." "She has the records." "Some." "Why didn't you tell the state?" "Because every truthful act now reveals another lie I helped maintain." Gideon walked away. Mara Bell was 31 and managed irrigation schedules for Red Creek. She met us at Lena's clinic after dark. Grant brought her through the rear entrance. He no longer looked like the confident man who had placed a lease on my porch. Mara wore a long-sleeved shirt despite the heat. When Lena asked to see her arm, Grant said, "It is contact dermatitis." Mara rolled up the sleeve. 3 red tracks crossed her wrist. The oldest had reached halfway to her elbow. My foot began to itch just from looking. "When?" Lena asked. 4 days ago." "Why did you wait?" Mara looked at her father. Grant said, "Silas treated 2 exposures at home." "Silas is dead," Lena replied. "I had the protocol." "Did you have T14? "A small amount." "Did you use it?" "Topically. It slowed the movement." Lena examined the tracks. "Slowed is not stopped." Mara said, "I found a broken drainage tile on our south field after the spring flood. I cleared it with my glove. Water went inside the cuff." "Your land is across the creek," I said. "Drainage lines cross under it," she replied. Grant looked at the floor. The contamination had spread, not across the surface, through buried agricultural tile installed decades earlier. Grant had known for 3 years. He found low organism counts after a flood and began privately monitoring workers. 4 workers had developed early symptoms. Silas treated them. Grant paid medical costs in cash. No official reports. "Why did Silas keep quiet?" I asked. "He said we needed proof of the route before the state dug everything up," Grant said. "And after proof, he planned to report." "When?" Grant's face tightened. "After harvest. There is always another harvest, another payroll, another month when truth will be less expensive." Silas died before the date arrived. Mara handed Priya the notebooks she took from the barn. They contained drainage maps, soil counts, exposure dates, T14 doses, and initials of workers. One set of initials appeared 6 times. "MB, Mara Bell." "This is not your first exposure," Lena said. "No." Grant closed his eyes. Mara had been exposed as a teenager while repairing a pump. Again at 22. Again after the flood. Each time Silas treated her. Grant's protection of secrecy was not abstract. He had watched the hidden protocol save his daughter. He believed disclosure might remove the only person and supply capable of treating her. What happens when T-14 is gone? I asked. Grant did not answer. Aaron owned the formulation. That was why the company wanted every vial and record. Not only liability, control. Lena admitted Mara to the hospital under the same emergency protocol used on me. The remaining T-14 stopped 2 tracks. The third continued. Priya obtained emergency authorization for a university laboratory to reproduce the compound from Silas's notes. Aaron filed an intellectual property objection. The state overrode it under public health authority. For 6 hours, lawyers debated ownership of a treatment while something moved toward Mara's elbow. The lab delivered a crude batch before dawn. It worked. Mara kept her arm. Grant sat beside her bed and cried into both hands. I did not forgive him. I understood him. Those are not the same act. After Mara stabilized, Grant withdrew the injunction. He agreed to opening the hatch under federal containment. The operation began during the driest week in August. I watched from a mobile command trailer with Priya, Lena, Mariah, Grant, and Gideon. Hazard crews removed the burned debris. They sealed a temporary structure over the foundation and established negative air pressure. A hydraulic lift raised the steel hatch. Beneath it, concrete steps descended into darkness. The first chamber contained old filters, monitoring pumps, sealed drums, and a decontamination shower. The second door opened with the brass key. Inside stood a fireproof cabinet and a wall of glass observation cells. Most cells were dry. One still held dark soil. When a technician placed a heated plate near the glass, the soil changed. Not dramatically, a subtle ripple. Thousands of dormant threads moving toward warmth. The original colony was alive. The sterilization had failed in 1999. A cracked waste line connected the chamber to the basement drain and the buried field tiles. The organism had not escaped because of one recent mistake. It had been moving through the property for 27 years. The fireproof cabinet held hard drives, paper records, sealed worker affidavits, and a small media player labeled Lecture 9. Priya played it in the command trailer. Silas appeared on screen wearing a sweater and his prosthetic leg. He looked directly into the camera. "This is not a lecture," he said. "It is a confession." He named Teravax. He named Gideon. He named his own decisions. He admitted signing monitoring reports that described the colony as inactive even after detecting migration toward the drainage system. He said he believed quiet containment would protect workers better than a rushed cleanup. For a time, he said, I may have been right. Then he listed the cost. 7 exposed workers. Mara's repeated infections. 2 cattle destroyed without report. A creek sample he falsified after the flood. His own leg. My error was not only secrecy, Silas said. It was believing that because I understood the danger, I had earned the right to decide who else could know. Gideon lowered his head. Grant stared at the screen. Silas continued. He explained why he left the farm to me. The environmental covenant gave the property owner sole authority to consent to permanent destruction of the colony and release the confidential archive. Silas could have done both. He had delayed. He said he no longer trusted himself to choose between containment and confession, so he transferred the choice to someone outside the system, someone who had not depended on the farm, someone he had already harmed through distance. I have called this inheritance, he said. It is not generosity. It is the last burden of a coward. I felt anger rise. The apology did not make the burden noble. He had left me contaminated land and medical risk without informed consent. Then he said something quieter. Caleb, if you leave without opening this room, I will understand. You owe me nothing. Not even the truth I was too afraid to tell. The video ended. No music. No final wisdom. Just a man sitting in silence until the recording stopped. The archive included a draft disclosure packet addressed to the Environmental Protection Agency worker families and my father. The letter to Aaron had never been mailed. Silas wrote that he allowed Gideon to make Aaron believe the family had accepted settlement money. He wrote that shame made reconciliation feel more dangerous each year. He had watched my life from a distance through school announcements, public records, and photographs Gideon obtained from my maternal grandparents. The birthday checks were not generosity. They were the smallest contact he believed he was allowed. I read the letter once, then put it down. Some wounds become understandable without becoming repairable. The state sealed the underground chamber. A federal court ordered Orrin to produce Teravac's research manufacturing records and treatment data. Orrin claimed the files had been lost during acquisition. The hard drives beneath the barn proved otherwise. They contained copies of corporate correspondence showing executives knew the organism could migrate toward mammalian heat before the field trial began. The trial had continued because the company feared losing a federal grant. The cleanup reports were altered. Worker physicians were instructed to diagnose chemical dermatitis. T14 was withheld from public research because Teravax intended to patent it as a veterinary anti-parasitic. The conspiracy was not one evil meeting. It was dozens of people solving the next immediate problem, delaying a report, softening a sentence, relabeling a payment, discarding a sample. Each choice was small enough to defend alone. Together they built the thing under the barn. Gideon admitted arranging the fire. Not directly. He paid a former Red Creek employee named Dale Mercer to destroy old chemical records before federal investigators arrived. Gideon claimed he believed the underground cabinet would survive. He wanted the paper files gone because they proved his conflict of interest in settlement payments. Dale used gasoline. The camera caught his truck. Payment records connected him to Gideon. When investigators confronted him, Gideon confessed. He was charged with evidence destruction, obstruction, and conspiracy related to the historical concealment. He resigned his license before the state could suspend it. Grant signed a cooperation agreement. He admitted false environmental reports and unreported worker exposures. The prosecutor considered criminal charges but weighed his cooperation, the original settlement structure, and the fact that he funded treatment for workers. He did not walk away. Red Creek entered court supervision. Its fields were quarantined. Operating credit disappeared. 43 seasonal employees lost work that year. Grant sold equipment and his house to fund payroll debts. Mara testified against Orrin while continuing treatment for nerve damage in her hand. She did not defend her father's secrecy. She also refused to let reporters call him a monster. "He was afraid," she said. "Fear explains what he did. It does not make the decision ours to forgive." The county held an emergency meeting in a high school gym filled with metal chairs, bad microphones, angry farmers, and families asking whether their gardens were safe. Priya presented drainage maps. Lena explained symptoms without using sensational language. Grant admitted Red Creek knew about low counts beyond the ward property. Gideon appeared by video through his attorney. When it was my turn, I did not tell the room I had exposed the truth. That would have made me the hero of a danger other people had carried for decades. I said I inherited the legal authority to release records. I said Silas should have done it himself. I said I broke the rule and became sick because nobody had given me the information required to give meaningful consent. A farmer stood and shouted, "So now we all lose our land because you couldn't keep your shoes on." Security moved toward him. I asked them to wait. He had a mortgage. 3 children. A field inside the proposed testing zone. His anger was cruel. His fear was real. I said, I did make a careless choice, but a safety system that depends on every person never making one careless choice is not a safety system. It is a countdown. The room quieted. Not because everyone agreed, because nearly everyone understood countdowns. The testing zone eventually covered 12 farms along the drainage corridor. 9 showed no organism. 2 showed trace dormant counts. Red Creek's south field showed active migration. No contamination appeared in municipal water. The creek required seasonal monitoring. The state prohibited excavation without containment. Orrin funded a medical screening program under court order. The company did not admit wrongdoing. Companies rarely need to use the word when numbers can perform the same function. The Ward farm could not be sold on the open market. The government acquired it at its pre-disclosure agricultural value. It was far below Oren's offer. After fees and debt, I was not rich. I paid off my student loans. I funded an independent trust for workers listed in Silas's archive. The educational trust he left me became part of it. I kept enough for physical therapy and a year of rent. The farmhouse was demolished. The basement drain and underground chamber were sealed inside a permanent research enclosure. The north field was covered with a controlled cap. No wheat grew there again. For months, ordinary itching felt like an emergency. Once Lena examined a red mark near my ankle and found only a scratch from a sock seam. My 2 numb toes never fully recovered. I walk normally. I do not go barefoot outside. Not because I believe every patch of soil is waiting, because my body remembers before my mind can reason. Lena left the county hospital and joined the university research team studying the organism and T14. Priya became the lead investigator for legacy biological control sites across the state. Mara worked with her as a field liaison after Red Creek stopped operating. Grant moved into a rental near his daughter. He and I spoke twice after the hearing. The first time he apologized for offering to buy the farm without disclosure. The second time he asked whether I hated Silas. I told him some days. He said, that is probably healthier than turning him into a saint. Gideon wrote me from county jail while awaiting sentencing. The letter contained no defense. He said my father had once told him, every secret becomes an inheritance if you keep it long enough. I did not answer. I kept the sentence. Before the farmhouse came down, the state allowed me one final visit. I wore a sealed suit, rubber gloves, and boots taped above the ankle. A technician walked with me. The rooms were empty. Sunlight marked the places where furniture had stood. In the kitchen, the warning remained carved into the wall. Keep your boots on. Never let the soil touch your bare skin. If it itches, do not scratch. The demolition crew offered to cut out the section for me. I said no. The warning belonged to the place that created it. I went upstairs and stood in Silas's bedroom. The prosthetic leg was gone to evidence storage. On the floor beneath the dresser, I found one birthday card that had never been mailed. The envelope had my name and the year I turned 16. Inside, Silas had written, I hope you are becoming someone who asks better questions than I did. That was all. I took the card. Outside, the technician asked whether I was ready. I looked across the 86 acres. For most of my life, I believed inheritance meant receiving what another person built. The farm taught me the other meaning. You also inherit what they postponed, the apology they did not send, the record they softened, the danger they managed instead of revealing. Silas's final rule saved my leg because I broke it only once. But the rule was never enough. Boots protected one person. Truth protected the next one. I left before the demolition began. I did not look back when the kitchen wall came down.